Okay, let's start. Let me share my screen and sorry. Just one more time. Let me share screen and then okay here. Okay, I assume you see my screen and then
yes.
Okay, great. So we talk about Neo-Taoism for the Sentimentalists. And last week we talked about Taoism, Neo-Taoism on the rationalist. So today we talk about Sentimentalists. And before we go to the detail, let's go over the schedule. And last week we talked about Neo-Taoism, the rationalist. And this week we're going to talk about Neo-Taoism, sentimentalist. So, and the next week we will kind of like wrap up our Taoism seminar, okay? Because and then we will talk about read another paper from Professor Dao Jian in New Jersey, and he wrote an article about Taoism, how Taoism reject or criticize Confucianism. Okay, that's a 3-4 page paper. So I think it's an easy read. So please read that paper and then we can have a discuss. And then we will move on to the Hinduism, and Sashi is going to complete the non-dualism. And then we will move through the history in the Asian philosophy or Chinese philosophy. We will start to touch on the Buddhism. So that's the schedule we are going. And then last week, we didn't talk about the history. And then because I see the Neo-Taoism as an independent philosophy, and we can see it without the historical background. But today, let's go over on the history, we will see. And I think you have seen this picture for many times. You have been here many times. So usually we start from the spring and the autumn, and that's Confucius, Mencius, and Taoism, Laozi, the Tao Te Ching, and for the Zhuangzi, the Taoist. Okay, and then last 2 months ago we talked about in the Han Dynasty, which is around 200 BC to 200 BC to 200 AD. Okay, so that's about 400 years. And during this period of time, now basically dominated by Confucianism philosophy. And then right now we move on to this period of time, the interest time, so-called the Qing Dynasty. And there's a many complex names. Sometimes you call Jin, sometimes they call North and the South Dynasty. The name is complex, and we don't have to explain detail in this meetup. But I think I will focus more on the around 300, the 3rd or 4th century, and during this period of time. And I think this period of time is very interesting, and the philosophy during this time is very different than the rest of philosophy happened in China. And probably not a lot of focus put on this one. So that's the purpose for today. So before we move on, and I would like to give some historical background. During this time, about I put the time so-called the Eastern Jin, okay? Eastern Wu, this period of time from 222 AD to 420, this about 200 years. Actually, you can go to about the 6th century, okay? During this period of time, and after this is Tang Dynasty, okay? That's what we are going to deal next month. And Tang Dynasty basics is more China, we can claim it's a united country. But during these 400 years, you can see the map. Okay, basically China is you can roughly say 2 countries, but actually it's more. And we can say 2 cultures. So on the north and the south. And through the history, we know they have the 5 tribes on the western side. They, during the Han Dynasty, have been settled inside the in China, the northern China. But when the Han Dynasty got weakened, then this minority, or we say the tribe, start to revolt, and then cause a lot of disturb on the society. So most of the Chinese, so-called Chinese or original Chinese or Han people, they move south. Okay, so basically the entire China, it's hard to claim it's one country. It's 2 countries, basically, or 2 cultures. One on the south, which is yellow, and one on north, which is blue. And they are culturally different. And I believe the language could be very different. So today's focus, when we talk about philosophy, and I'm talking about this part on the southern part, which is more dominated by the Neo-Taoism thinking. And on the northern part, which is more on the Confucianism thinking, but the problem is a lot of government set up and on the north, which are not Chinese, but they try to be learn Chinese culture. So what they learn is Confucianism culture, and they also bring some religion, which is Buddhism. So you will see during this time, China is very different and 2 worlds. And then today we will focus on the south part. So it's different. The culture and the political are different from north and the south, also different from the Han Dynasty before. So I mark in the 2 different colors. In Han Dynasty, which is from 200 BC to 200 AD, okay, and the Qing Dynasty, we can say from after 200 AD to 400 AD during this period of time. You know, in Han Dynasty, more on the Confucianism, which is not real analects of Confucianism, basically is more on the Dong Zhongshu, who is talking about heaven and the human interaction, this kind of mystical Confucianism. But in the Qing Dynasty, more on the Taoism, but actually it's not the Dao De Jing kind of Taoism or kind of Zhuangzi kind of Taoism. It's so-called the Neo-Taoism, which we introduced last week. And another name called Xuan Xue. Okay, that's the philosophy different. If we talk about culture or literature, we can easily say in the Han Dynasty, the literature or culture is more on the classicism. Okay, and in Qing Dynasty, it's more romanticism. Okay, and if you talk about the lifestyle or something, you will call the Han Dynasty is more on dignity and grandeur. And in Qing Dynasty would be elegance and freedom. That's a different kind of thinking. And this summary I draw from the reading from Feng short history of Chinese philosophy. So that's the general idea during this period of time. So before I move on, does anyone have any question or any comment before I start for today's philosophy?
Yeah, I have a question about the reading. I don't know if this is the right time to ask it though. When he talked about, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
So in the short history of Chinese philosophy, I think it was the second page of the chapter. I think he was talking about the Yang Zhu chapter from the Liezi, and he said that it could not. My understanding of what he was saying was that it could not be said to represent the views of the historical Yang Zhu because the Liezi was written too late. Therefore, it represented the views of the time that it was written, I think was his argument. I'm wondering what you think about that.
I agree with him, on this part, because I don't see he talking about the Feng Youlan. Okay, he talk about he mentioned about Yang Zhu, and they have one Yang Zhu which exists in the ancient time, which is in the early warring state, or even in the spring and the autumn period of time. Okay, but he doesn't have an actual writing left. Okay, they have some story. Usually, it's people criticize him, And they have a book called 列子, okay, which has a chapter called 杨朱, and they have the Yang Zhu's philosophy there. And Feng Youlan, the author of the short history of Chinese philosophy, he states the 列子 is most likely being fabricated, okay, or created during this period of time, because he believed all the thinking, all the writing style and the philosophy are very similar to this period of time. That's his argument. And of course, that's, everybody have a different argument. Personally, I will agree with the author, Feng Youlan. I think that's not the original. And that's just the people in the Tang Dynasty they created. That's my opinion. So we have Andrea, right?
Yeah, sorry, this might be an unfair question at this stage in the game, but what do you think? How would you think these traditional ways of thinking influenced modern Chinese thinking, or modern cultural Chinese thinking?
Okay, I got your question. I have to say this is a big question. I don't have time to answer. Okay, I hope you understand. That's because first, when you say influence the Chinese thinking, you mean China, the People's Republic of China, or Taiwan, or Hong Kong, or people on the East Asia. That's a different story. Or even people in America, right? So that's a different story. And second, the inverse will be very different, right? And I have to say quickly on the Neo-Taoism for today's section. I don't see have a great influence on the modern people, because I have to say, because the traditional education have purposely put down on this thinking, because I think because of the nationalism thinking, because they think the government think this philosophy is not good for the country. Okay, so that's why they don't focus much. And usually, when I grew up in Taiwan during the draconian law, martial law of Chiang Kai-shek, so I received education and tell us that's wrong. Okay, and then, but I think we should give a fair treatment. Okay, make sure.
Thank you.
I hope I don't answer too long, but basically that's my personal view. So thank you, Mark, to talk about the book. So today's I will say the information or presentation, basically I draw from these resources called the New Account of the Tales of the World. Okay, and Feng Youlan, the author, also talk about, but he called it the 世说. He used this word 世说. Okay, and actually the correct name should be 世说新语. So if you want to make a note on this, and I think the right translation by the meaning means the new account of the tales of the world, and the world you should consider as the China and probably the southern China, because at that time they probably consider the northern part of China as foreign during that time. So it was written on the 5th century and compiled by a person called Liu Yiqing. And of course, we don't say this record are all correct. So the story we present, we don't know it's true or not true, because it's based on this book. And he wrote it down about 200 or 100 years later. So, we don't know it's true or not true. And of course, Liu Yiqing, the author, have his own bias. So, we should treat the story carefully. But this book is also important because it's very unusual in the Chinese history. This book basically compiled of 1,130 anecdote, okay, story for person and their human qualities. Okay, I think I highlight this one is, in general, Chinese historical book hardly talk about person and their human quality. Okay, so that's why I make this one special. And it also touch on the mystical matter, okay, and 玄学, and this part we don't use, but the 世说新语 also famous for the style of discussion, which not philosophy tractates, but also easygoing, quick-witted conversation. And this one we call qingtan, or the translation is pure conversation. Okay, so that's the important part I would like to introduce today, because that become an activity. And although the personality are all historical, their conversation must be seen as fiction, partially with philosophy, philosophical content, but some story have also touched on fantasy. Okay. So the character of the person often vividly described, besides philosophical or moral things. The text contains a lot of information on politics, literature, and culture during this time. So it's a very different book, and it's a pleasure to read this book because it's different. It's combined of a lot of story and talk about people. Andrew, please.
You're sitting there at a table and your friend won't drink sparkling water, he's not your friend. Because when shit hits the fan and you get jumped and you're getting stabbed by jumping in front of knives to save your ass, like a good friend should, if he's scared of fucking bubble.
Okay, we have some short entertaining, and then I think I need a co-host. And Madeline, are you okay?
Yep, that would be fine.
Okay, yeah. Without you, we have here, so so you are necessary for this. Okay. Anyway, thank you for being patient. So, okay. So that's about this book. Okay. So let's move on. Just take a quick peek on what's the content on this book. And I think the interest, if you, I didn't read most of them. Okay, I just read some of them, and I probably don't have all the detail about this book. So something interesting is the virility and the boldness. They also talk about the ladies, okay, and the interesting, and talk about some words. And then if you take a look, you can see what's the content on that. It's a rich content and a lot of story you can read from this. So probably that's the first time in Chinese history have a fun book to read. So that's why I really appreciate, and I hope I have time to introduce a little more on this book. We have just 1 minute. Alex, you want to say something, please?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So this book, 世说新语, it's more like a dialect kind of a format?
No, it's not a dialectical format like okay. Basically, it's the text is written like there's a guy, his name doing this, he doing this job, but one day he see another person, he asks you, and I will talk about the story, some of the story, but basically it's not in dialectical form. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We have Marika, please.
Yes, Jason, is this new? I mean, this type of writing stories and very clear, or was something that was in a tradition?
I'm not expert on this. I believe your question is the writing style. I would say the writing style during this period of time.
Another one.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Madeline. Okay, so I will say the writing style, I will touch on the writing style during this one, because the writing style is different during this period of time. Oh, shoot. Okay,
It sounds like Plato.
Yeah, today we have some problem, and then let me take care of this.
My God!
Holy
shit!
Anybody know? Madeline, did you take care? Okay, so I think we should be able to start now.
Yeah, I think I may have also thrown out one innocent person. We'll see.
Okay, so sorry now if you know somebody being thrown out by mistake, and let me know. I will bring him back. Okay, so we should be able to start. Okay, just 1 minute. The book, and okay, back to Marika's question on the writing style. During this period of time, the writing style becomes flowery. Okay, so they use a lot of beautiful words, okay, and detailed description, and they put too much on the rhetoric and use a lot of long, beautiful words. So artistically, it's a great achievement. But you will see during the next 100 or 200 years, they have a movement to change this writing style because they say that's too much decoration. You should go back to the point, your argument point. So that's a movement we will deal with later on the Tang Dynasty, which is on the 6th, 7th century. Personally, I can't doing this kind of meetup. One of my job is reading the original text and try to translate to English. And I have to be honest, during this period of time, the Chinese text become difficult for me to translate because they use a lot of flowery word and sometimes distract to the main point. So make my translation difficult. The ancient time, the Confucius time, or the later time will be much easier for me. So thank you for asking this question. So let's move on. From now on, I'm going to introduce a few Chinese words which were used or created during this period of time, which has no English equivalent, and it's very difficult to translate. So first, the word, I think in the Feng Youlan's writing, Short History of Chinese Philosophy, the word called Ming Shi. Okay. I think I have to translate, if word by word, I will translate reputed and scholarly. Okay, that's one word translate, or celebrities, gentry, personage. Okay, that's only that I can translate. Then basically you can say the first word means famous or honored. Okay, great, the meaning. Second word, shi, you can translate as scholar, learned person. Okay, so this kind of probably today's celebrity, okay, in the cultural world, probably I will say this way, and their word and their style were being considered as great, and some people will start to mimic this kind of people. And back to the 世说新语, I think Alex asked this question about so that's the text from 世说新语. He talked about, I just copied the original, and then if you can read the Chinese, okay. I just translate in this way. A 名士, which is the 名士, is not necessary to have any special skills, but he needs to have plenty of leisure time. To become a 名士, one needs to enjoy drinking wine, and read Li Sao. Li Sao is an ancient text, a beautiful writing from a poet named Qu Yuan. One day we may introduce this ancient literature writing. So of course, reading Li Sao, they all read this book. Okay, it's not a moral teaching book, but more on the literature side. So so that's the definition. I don't say that's the definition we should use, but let's represent one side from the book. 世说新语, they make this definition. Yeah. Alex, please.
Yeah, so I know a little bit because when I was doing the Warren Says period, so Li Sao, this poem, the series of poems is written by Qu Yuan when he was obsolete from the court. And this book is really a mythological book, and a lot of people have say that this is the first Chinese mythological book, because it talks about how a man travels through and meets a lot of mythological figures like gods and goddesses, which is very, very different. So it's kind of like a journey, you know, and to find, you know, to meet these incredible people, like who are not normal, you know, that live above the norm. I mean, that's, you know, which is totally different from the book, you know, during that time. So that's why I think, you know, they read this book so that it's kind of almost like an out of body experience, because a lot of stories that happen in this book talks about, you know, he's dreaming of going to these places and meeting goddesses and gods and have all these mystic journeys.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, I remember you mentioned you would like to introduce this book to the group, and I hope it happened. Thank you. Yeah, it's not an easy book, but you know, it's a beautiful writing. Probably just like, you know, mythology. You know.
Yes, one of the best in Chinese.
And then the language is very different from the ancient text, because it's on the south. The author is on the southern side, so the tone they use is more southern style than the northern style. So I have to bring this person, because when I read the Ming Si, okay, I try to find the example, and I kind of think about the Lord Byron on the 18th century. And I remember when I have used to have a meetup to read Bertrand Russell's the history of Western philosophy, and there's one chapter talked about Lord Byron, and the first question comes is he a philosopher? Okay, but I think if you know Lord Byron, and I think Lord Byron you can consider would be counterpart of Ming Si I'm going to talk about. And then I think Bertrand Russell described him as aristocratic rebel. Okay, so he is one of the leading figures of Romantic movement, and Byron is regarded as one of the greatest English poets. That's from Bertrand Russell. But so I think Bertrand Russell, when we in the meetup group, we try to figure out why Bertrand Russell put the Lord Byron in one of the Western history of Western philosophy. And I think Bertrand Russell appreciated his Romantic movement, his influence on the continental Europe. And the reason Bertrand Russell put Lord Byron in the book is he wanted to talk about Nietzsche in the later time. And that's I think. But you know, I think if you want to see who is Ming Si in the Western world, I would say Lord Byron, probably one of them. Okay. DLJ, please, and Alex. Yeah.
Great minds think alike. I was as that your descriptive previous slide came out, I was thinking, oh, Byron-esque.
Okay.
I nearly put it in the chat, right? And then I thought, well, hang on, better clarify, because the typical Byron-esque character was kind of romantic, yes, but sort of self-absorbed and a bit gloomy. That'd be the same for the Ming Si? Yeah.
We will see. I will give you some example, and then we will say probably say we will see. That's just my opinion, but you know we can discuss. Yeah. Thank you. I'm great. You know, you verify my thinking. I didn't talk to anybody, and then Alex, please.
Yeah, actually, just a quick question, because I actually heard from like a movie, a comment from a movie or a book I wrote that I read, that I don't know if there's another Byron, but if this is the only Byron. The comment that I know, I never read Byron, but the comment that I heard was that if you read too much Byron, you'll be depressed or something.
Well, I think you read too much anything would be depressed. I probably.
but then I think that the 名士, right? The lifestyle of the 名士 is such that they are much happier. They are not really, they don't think about too much about politics, or they talk about it, but they generally have a Taoist attitude, which is basically mostly happy with that.
Okay, we will see. Let's see. I think everyone will be different. Okay, so okay, let's move on. Okay, so that's the important part I like to talk about today is the qingtan. Okay, so let's analyze this thing. Okay, qing and tan. Okay, qing, first word on the surface means pure, clear. Tan means conversation. So that's why the most translation will call it pure conversation. But I think they have the more hidden meaning on that. When they use the word qing means pure, that means opposite to the secular, which is 浊 unclear. Okay, so it means you don't touch the real world. But when you say not secular, you are not talking about the other world, I mean the heaven, this kind of thing, no, afterlife, no. They are talking about metaphysical, but not about God. Okay, they talk about metaphysical. And when they talk about tan, conversation, they are not talking about this kind of conversation or chatting. They're talking about a debate, dialectical. So I will call the qingtan, if I have to translate, I will call it a debate on metaphysics. And when I say debate, because I consider that one qingtan as a sport, okay? For this reason, first, it's a public debate, and they have the certain set rule. It's not just like casual, they have the rule, okay, who talk first and blah, blah, blah. They have a certain rule. I read some document about this rule, but I'm not very clear because it's just some guess. Okay, and it's not one-to-one, and sometimes 2, 3, 4 people. Okay, they have talked, and the proposition basics is not like talking about how to make more money, is the political right, and who shall vote. Not this kind of issue. Okay, or environmental issue. No, they are talking something totally useless. Okay, in some point of view, they talk about the emptiness, yin yang cosmology, or they may take one sentence from the 道德经 or from the 庄子. For example, I think last week Madeline asked about, what do you mean the heaven and earth is one finger? Okay, let's talk about this. Then they can talk for hours on this. So this kind of subject they are talking about. So I see this one as a sport because it's compete, but it's not only like today's debate, it's more than that. So that's on the 3 areas. First, about the dialectic. So compete who has clear the best thought on everything. And the second, that's the rhetoric. Okay, so you have to use the best language, okay, the style, including the gesture, and sometimes they play music. You see this picture, and sometimes how you wear your dress also important. So one account I say, when you talk, you should use clip and make the big noise or stamp. Okay, this kind of gesture are all important because the purpose is make your point and have convince people. And another area they are competing is aesthetic. So they have to use the best phraseology, the best phrase, best words that reflect the contemporary literature style. So this one is the 名士. Okay, when we talk about 名士, okay, these people, their activity. Okay, so I consider that one as a sport. And I feel a little bit sorry or upset, because this kind of sport doesn't continue. Okay, it just lasts during that time, and then people usually have a negative comment on that because these guys, you are a scholar and you never think about help your country, and you talk about something nonsense. Just like today, our conversation probably we talk about is kind of qingtan, pure conversation today. So that's the thing. I think that's important, but only exists during the history for about probably 200 years, and then it kind of disappeared. Marika, please.
Yes, what's the purpose of the debate? I mean, what do they try to arrive to, a common understanding or to show that they know? And the purpose also was to be a more peaceful life or more happy life or knowledge. What was the main idea behind? What do they try to accomplish with these debates?
That's why I call it a sport, because just like you play football, okay, and what's your purpose, and probably it's hard to say, right? You just want to win, or you just want to show, okay, you are good at the basketball and something like this, or you play chess, okay, and what's your purpose to play chess? I believe that's their lifestyle, and that's their intellectual activity, and so that's why I call it a sport.
And one short question too. Did they record the discussion, the debate, or was a written record of what was going on?
Okay, all the record in the book, I just introduced 世说新语, the new account of the tales of the world, because they have the record to say they talk about this. And unfortunately, they have not video, they don't have the video recording, so we don't know what's going on. And we just know it's a public debate, and they talk about this. And all the information we know is from the book, 世说新语. Alex, please.
Yeah, just a quick question. You said they don't talk about politics, or they?
No, they don't talk about politics because they try to stay away from the politics world. So, so they only talk about, for example, they talk about the heaven and the earth is one finger. Why they use finger? Okay, this kind of subject. Or talk,
Okay.
yeah. I think I see example one is they debate on they debate on it, can something can nothing create something? Okay, this kind of subject they will discuss, and they will use the ancient text to talk about, just like Marika talked about. What's the purpose talking about this? Yeah. So I don't know what's the purpose.
I think that I have a just an idea that I think this quote unquote sport die out because the Confucians is and the government is all Confucian based, and this kind of discussion about yin yang, emptiness, cosmos, it's not supported by the government, and therefore it becomes, even though they don't talk about politics, but it's still sensitive, and I think the government must have condemned it, and it's not proper to way to conversation, and it's like hearsay. I feel that the Confucians of those times is not going to encourage this kind of behavior, so might have to try to end it.
I think it's different, okay, because during that time I forget which one of the emperor even supported. Okay, so they make a 玄学 as one of their royal school, and then the emperor, well, we should not call emperor because at that time it's only a small government, and then the king, or so-called emperor, small emperor, even host a meeting, okay, to discuss 81 卦 in I Ching, and they do one by one on every day. And then people start to debate. It's not right because some Gua are more important, some are less important. So some Gua should have many days to discuss. So it's being supported. But I think the reason it died out is I think in the history you will know later on the northern country like Sui Dynasty, they going down. And they, in general, people consider this kind of activity is useless, helpless, and negative activity. So it's not encouraged. So I think that's the reason.
Okay.
Madeline, please.
Yes, sorry, everyone. This is just a security matter. Jason, if you've been letting people in from the waiting room, stop doing that and I'll let them in if they seem legitimate.
All right, thank you, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I forget, thank you, okay, so if no more question, I will move on, let me see. Okay, so no more question, then I'm going to move on for the next concept, okay. So right now we should know what's the 明示 and what's a pure conversation. Okay, another concept called Feng Liu, and I think the Feng Youlan also spent some pages to discuss this concept. And we still use this word today, but it's a little bit different than the ancient time use. Let's stick with the ancient, this word being used during that time. They all call Feng Liu, okay? And the way to describe Feng, the first word means wind. Second word means stream. So you probably want to try to picture, okay, if your style is like wind and the stream, okay. So it probably means romantic, okay. That's I try to gather all the explanation, okay. Talented in letters and unconventional in lifestyle. So if you keep mimicking other people doing, then it's not Feng Liu, okay. And the Feng Youlan said they suggest something of freedom and ease. I think the effortless, you know, which are some of the quality of Feng Liu. Okay, so that's the concept, and probably that's the best I can explain this word. But it's not today's meaning. Today, when people talk about Feng Liu, sometimes in a little bit negative word and usually mentioned on the man, not the woman. For example, you have one girlfriend, have another girlfriend, and you may call this guy is Feng Liu. Okay, but during that time, it doesn't has this kind of meaning. But yeah, I hope I explained clear. But later on, when I bring the people, you might have a better idea. So, question or comment? Okay, back to Mark at the beginning mentioned about Yang Zhu. Okay, so I think in the beginning of this year I introduced, and also in the I think the first chapter or second chapter, and the Feng Youlan introduced Yang Zhu as the first stage of Taoism movement. Okay, so it means you retreat from the political world, from the real world. Okay, so the main idea is each one for himself, and the despising of things and the valuing of life. Okay, remember there's two aspects, and the people constantly forget the other one. One is despising the external thing, and you will have valuing your internal thing, which is your life, and which made the foundation of today's Chinese medicine, okay, the nurturing your body, your life. Okay, so this concept, and that's famous writing on this one through the Liezi Yang Zhu, and this writing, the Chinese writing may not be exactly created by Yang Zhu, but it probably reflects what Yang Zhu's teaching. He said the men of antiquity, basically they are talking about the disciple of Yang Zhu, if by injury a single hair they could have profited the world, would not have done it. Had the world been offered to them as their exclusive possession, they would not have taken it. if everyone would refuse to pluck out even a single hair, and everybody would refuse to take the world as a game, the world would be in perfect order. Okay, so this one has become a teaching of Yangzhu, the fundamental idea, and then personally, I don't take this one as a doctrinal belief. Okay, because it will be just like in the Bible. I think the Matthew talk about it's easier for camel go through the eye of needle than for the rich man to enter the kingdom of God, right? If you take this one as a doctrine, then if you are Christian, you should give away all the money. You should become a poor people, right? But some people do that, but not a lot of people doing that. So I will say this one we should take as a so-called living belief. Okay, so you live this principle, but not take it as a doctrine. So I think that's what Yangzhu's basic idea on this world. Marika, please.
Yes, Jason, I don't see that each one for himself here. I mean, where is the each one for himself? And that's totally contrary to Confucius, right?
Yes, it's contrary to Confucius. Okay, he talk about each one. Basically, he said, for example, I don't want to pluck one hair to help the world. So the idea is I don't interfere with other people's business. So I will talk about this one. This kind of thinking has been appeared during this period of time. Very similar. I will bring the example is John Stuart Mill, right, on liberty. He talked about individuality. Okay, this kind of concept. Okay, everybody do for yourself, but not interfere other people's business. So I think that's Yangzhu's idea, and which has been started in the ancient time, and during this time has been focused, in this one. So to answer your question, we can read a little bit more on the Liezi, the chapter Yangzhu. They have a lot of writing on that. Okay, so basically, I just kind of summarize this one. There are 4 things which do not allow people have peace. So one is long life, reputation, rank, and riches. Okay, so these 4 things make people not allow people to have peace. Okay, so they start to talking about their lives are controlled by externals. Okay, basically these 4 things: the long life, reputation, rank, and the riches. So these kind of people, they feel ghost, feel man, feel power, feel punishment. So they live their life controlled by external. What they want to do is you have to live, your life should be regulated by internals. So to reject these 4 things, if you should not violate your destiny, then you will not desire long life. This one is a little bit tricky. Basically, it's talking about you still want to live a long life, but you don't desire, okay, to live long life. Because if you desire, okay, you will start controlled by externals, and then not fond of honor, then you will not desire the reputation. You're not wanting power, you will not desire rank, and not greedy, you will not desire riches. Then you can live peacefully. Okay, so that's basics, Yangzhu's teaching. So that's the idea they are bringing. Other than the Taoism or Neo-Taoism thinking, they also bring Yangzhu's idea during this period of time. Alex, please.
Just have a quick question. This slide, when you say peace, right? Allow people to have peace. No,
Yeah.
This one. Exactly peace, because in Chinese could be a little bit different translation. What is the Chinese translation for?
Hold on. Yeah, that's a good question. Let me see. Which one I translated?
internal peace or peace with the world, or is it being a recluse?
Oh, okay. This one, okay. Let me see. There are 4 things. I have to find the original. Just give 1 minute. Okay. I didn't copy here. Let me see. Okay, here in the Chinese word, okay, I think you asked a very technical question. Okay, the original word say cannot rest. Okay, Alex, do you got my 不得休息? Okay, you
Okay.
have no way to rest if you have these 4 things in your mind. So, okay, so I think you cannot. You will be restless. Okay, I think that's what they mean. You know, if you have this thing in as your goal.
So like to do all this restless, like
then you will become restless, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then and even if you achieve long life, reputation, rank, and riches,
because you have a long life, right? You start worrying. You know, am I get cancer? And is my blood pressure is too high, so I have to check. I have to go to see doctor, you know, every week. You know? So this kind of thing they are talking about, you know.
But some those people who find peace for achieving rank, reputation, riches, and long life, that's like really kind of like, it sounds a little bit antisocial, like, or like living out of the society, because
it's antisocial. You know. In a way, it really depends on what do you mean social, right? If you mean social is working for the government, okay, doing business, that's one thing. If you say social is, I have with all my philosophical friends and we go to the beach side and we just live simple life. I don't know, you call this one social or unsocial, depending on who you define. How do you define what's the society? James, please. James, I think you are muted.
Thank you. Yeah, this reminds me of Buddhism, not being attached to long life. I keep meeting people that, especially people are like closer to my age, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going down and having my body frozen, you know, when I'm going to pass away, you know, that way I might live forever. So really silly ideas. And the reputation, rank, and riches, definitely getting attached to things. And the problem with that is the idea of the fears, you know, as you're basically just succumbing to all these fears. And instead of just simply living life for the value it has, that, you know, and I also thought of Bill Gates, you know, when I saw that, you know, reputation, rank, riches, long life, all that stuff, you know, it's like just go to the very top, get all the wealth, and work really hard, achieve the highest rank and the most riches, and then of course on the flip side, he has to become like Andrew Carnegie, he has to become a benefactor. He has to turn his life around. So there are 2 kind of philosophies: the philosophy of the unstoppable entrepreneur that has to become to give money away and at the end, and then the idea of Buddhism, where you just simply resist this from the get-go, the attachment to objective wealth and reputation.
Yeah, thank you, James. And actually, Buddhism is one thing I kind of like to mention here a little bit. In the northern part of China, I think that time they have some Buddhist monk, sure, but they probably all foreign. Okay, so that's one thing. And the south probably has some idea, but not very strong. So we don't know. Actually, I don't know. Is this one influenced by Buddhism, or its original had this kind of idea? So it's a little bit mixed. But during this period of time, I don't see the text mentioned about Buddha or Buddhism, this kind that mentioned. But in the later time, okay, they become very strong. Okay, so I would believe that's a transition time. Yeah, so you will see naturally Taoism thinking is similar to Buddhism, and that's why some people will say, remember the Lao Tzu, and when he ride on the ox and heading west, then they say, yeah, west they go all the way to India, and he's a Buddha. So and because the timeline is probably similar time. So we have another hands up or no? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, America. Yeah.
Do we know if they have any knowledge of Greek philosophy? Because Alexander went to India, and in China, did they have any knowledge of? Do we know that?
Of course, I'm not expert to answer this question, but if I do my best, I will say no, because I don't see any. But does that mean something? I don't know. But to this point, I will say no. It's unlikely, because first thing about West, probably from I think Indian is the first heavy influence on the West, the foreign influence, Indian philosophy.
But did they have communication with India because they have the Silk Road already, or not?
No, Silk Road is not like somebody built a road, not like this. Basically, it's over the time. And starting from this period, they have the travel to the West. And I don't see, at least I don't see any historical account talking about Greek philosophy influence, and I don't see any idea. I feel, because I also like Greek philosophy, and I read them, and personally I don't see, at least I don't find the trace. That's Plato talk about this. So at least I don't. The reason I make such a strong argument is I always complain Chinese writing lack of syllogism, okay, or logic. So if they know Aristotle, they probably will take it, okay, on this one. But I don't see that. But they take it, the logic from Buddhism. So when the Indian, the Buddhism thinking come to China, I find out that their writing being changed. They start to use the word because, therefore, for this reason, this kind of word. So I believe this kind of thinking is from India. Mark, please.
Yeah, Jason, I want to agree with you about Chinese philosophy. I've done a lot of comparison of Greek, Indian, and Chinese philosophy, and there's a huge amount of similarities between Greek and Indian philosophy. They share many, many features that are very different in Chinese philosophy. Okay. So even though they develop you can see their independent development, the Chinese is so different than the Indian Greek in things like the elemental system, the lack of a metaphysical debate between materialism and idealism, the lack of the putting of the social question before the metaphysical questions. There's all these things that Indian and Greek philosophy have in common that is different in Chinese. So I tend to agree with Jason. But prior to Buddhism, I don't think there was much outside influence on Chinese philosophy.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And well, thank you for agreeing with me. But even you disagree, I also thank you. So anyway, that's the thing I want to talk, because it's bring up this subject from time to time. And if I have to guess, I would say Indian influence Greek, because I see a lot of Greek, like Sansama, the reincarnation concept. Even they have no evidence, but I will see that's a similarity. In India. So before I talk about the people that have a few minutes, talk about the sensation, okay, the emotion part, because in philosophy hardly talk about emotion. So I think this period of time, people start to treat emotion. Okay, so I just have to put this one. And how does, the important part is how does this one connect to the Neo-Taoism philosophy? So first, it's you reject, refusing to live according to others. So we talk about you live according to more others' moral standard. For example, Confucius rituals. Your parents die, you have to mourn for 3 years. Okay, the custom, rituals, this kind of thing, they reject this one. So you want to live according to oneself. And according to Feng writing, he said that there's two ways to live, living according to reason or living according to impulse. And when you choose to live according to reason, that's Neo-Taoism in the last week, rationalist. And if you choose to live in according to impulse, that's the sentimentalist in this week. Personally, myself, I disagree on this argument. I would say both. They are both living according to reason and living according to impulse. And both of them reject living according to others, which is a social standard, moral standard, and custom, this kind of thing. So the reason I talk about this, and because I think they have a few words in Chinese is important, and I try to translate. First, they talk about dispersing emotion with reason. Okay, so it's not just go pure reason or emotion. They use reason to deal with your emotion. And then another thing called is a heavy emotion, but no ensnarement, or you call it no attachment. Okay, so you express your emotion, but you don't suffer from that. And I find out there's a good description from the Irish, I think it's a playwright or poet, Oscar Wilde. Okay, I read this one when I read James Joyce, Ulysses. Okay? You talk about a sentimentalist is one who desire to have the luxury of an emotion without paying for it. Okay, I think that's probably properly described, these people. So I think that here also have Wang Rong, one of the 7 sages in the of the bamboo grove. He lost his son and he's crying so hard, and he talked about it is people like ourselves have the most emotion. So Feng Youlan's description, he said that they were sentimental, not about some personal loss or gain, but about some general aspect of life and of the universe. So they have the sentiments about life and the universe as a whole, and also about their own sensitivity and the sentiment. So they do have an emotion, and they freely express their emotion, but they try not to have emotion damage yourself or oneself or other people. And they kind of bring emotion as a way it is. Okay, you enjoy the luxury of emotion without paying for it. That's the best I can explain, and I hope someone can help me. If you can, that'd be great. Yeah, James, please.
Yeah, I think the quote from Oscar Wilde is meant to be derisive. In other words, of sentimentalists. The sentimentalist is one who has the luxury, wants to have the luxury of an emotion without paying for it. In other words, without any price, and that is that kind of the idea here in the sentimentalists, I think. And also this other quote from Wang Rong, it is people like ourselves who have the most emotions. Isn't that doesn't that sound a little elitist?
No, he's talking about this. Okay, I didn't quote the whole sentence. He talked about for the sage. Okay, when you sage, he talked about the Taoism sage. He talked about the sage, the highest ranking people. They forget about their emotion, so they can deal everything. You lost your son, you still, you understand. For the lower people who has not reached the level of emotion, so kind of like, and here he talked about, you can call it this elite, or you can call the middle class, or you talk about the scholar, whatever you want to call. People like us, the people, philosopher, okay, we have most emotion. That's what he's talking about. Okay. So another way to, that's my personal understanding, okay, because I really like this. That's just my personal, I really like this philosophy. And that's the reason I said they living according to reason and living according to impulse, because you use reason to decide when are you going to have emotion out or not. Okay, so sometimes too much emotion is damaging to yourself and other people. Then you will use reason to disperse your emotion. But sometimes emotion is good, okay? Crying, laughing, drinking, or even smoking, okay? It's helpful in some situation. You would do it, okay? And you probably don't care about how people go look at you, okay? A little bit antisocial during certain of time. That's the lifestyle I think they are doing. So, Alex, please.
I think the confusion here really is why did he because I read the actual Chinese, and then they translate it from the Chinese term 豁达率性 to sentimentalists.
Yeah.
That is actually, in my opinion, it's not a very correct translation, because in English, sentimentalists means that they are caring, they have a lot of emotion, and most of the times they go overboard. They're emotional, they're sentimental, they have a lot of empathy. They're sad, they're happy, they're sad, they cry. They have expressions and emotions towards many different things. They care. That's the distinction here, that they care. But 豁达率性 here, it's not really about that. Yeah, they care, but definitely is without the attachment. Because I was really confused, like being sentimentalist and then being an individual again, and then throughout our discussion, I feel that the translation of the sentimentalist doesn't really cover 豁达率性, the actual essence of this way of living, this style of philosophy. I don't know if there's another better word to use it, but I think sentimentalist only covers to a certain degree of this philosophy.
Alex, thank you for mentioning that. I totally agree with you, but if I have to pick one word, I'm not sure what would be the best word. And I think last week I tried to translate 豁达率性. I tried to do that. And the question is, what's 豁达? It's kind of like openness, vast, right? And
yeah, I think it's very 庄子. It's something that it's something that you don't hold on to. Once you're like what you mentioned, how to find peace with yourself. They mention, don't go into politics or career or being, riches or care about your own life, whether you're healthy or not. Just live as you wish, live as happy as you are. So it's not really sentimental. It's more like just live the way you want to live, without worrying about repercussions.
but
I don't know if there's a word for that, other people in this group.
But they do have the sentimental side of that, right? When they sad, they cry, okay? When they're happy, they laugh, okay? And they work on their own nature, right? So they do have this side. So
yes.
Okay. I hope the discussion between Alex and me help people don't know Chinese understand. I hope, but that shows sometimes it's very difficult, to translate this word. But doesn't mean we should not try, because in another meetup, I think we should do our best to bring what jump out from the limits of language. Kevin, please.
I know Chinese, I want to share some 2 cents. Yeah, actually, Alex, I didn't read the whole text Chinese. Yeah, that's what I would say those word by word make sense. Make more sense. Like, but don't hold. She mentioned don't hold on it. Also, open your mind and be yourself, but not stick to something make you sad. It's just past to past, future. Enjoy the moment. That's about the 3. If you use the 3 名字 in the bamboo, it's like you enjoy with your friend, have a couple of beers, share a thought, whatever doesn't mean we don't speak. Okay, no politics, doesn't matter. As long as you share your thought, don't speak. It's very, I would say, open-minded thought. And if you think about the Tao Te Ching, right, from loads, I'm not sure, Jason, you agree with this. Everything I think about, all from Tao Te Ching, that's the thoughts. You can't track those. It's those like brunch. You use sentiment, and last week we use rational life. It's you can trust to the Tao Te Ching. That's how do you even confuse that? That's another branch. It's too strict, legalized, or make rules. It's very interesting thought. However, that's about another thing. What Western philosophy or religion, they have stick one thing. That's why it's hard to grasp the Chinese philosophy or religion. What's Chinese religion? People say they know. Or maybe you can Google search folk religion, but we consider street religion, maybe it's Tao and Buddhism and Confucius. And lots of temples, three religion come out too. Mostly in mainland China, it's 2 of them. One is Tao. In the Buddhist temple, they have Tao. Tao is the old there. In the Tao, they have Buddhism. So sometimes have Confucius. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we've done with the theory. Okay, so let's introduce the people. Okay, so hope bring up the people will help people understand the how this term 明示, 清谈 or 风流, 率性, what all this means. Okay, so let's use the people. So famous is the 7 sages of the bamboo grove. And this one, the name has been created long time after, okay? And then they use bamboo. They probably have some Buddhism influence here. And the words sages, I don't see that's the right words because 贤, I think here means 名士, 7 famous scholar. And then they all know each other, but don't think about they all. Like again, they 7 people all get together drinking and partying. No, they are not there. They some are probably not met each other, but they just group these 7 people as an example. And actually, they have more than that. And the basis is from 世说新语, okay, the book. So you can just quick look at the 三韬, 阮籍, 刘伶, 向秀, Wang Rong, we talk about, he talked about people like us as the most, has the most emotion, right? Xiang Xiu is last week, we talk about the 庄子注, he do the commentary on 庄子, okay? Ji Kang, I'm going to introduce a little bit more today because some of his writing I think is interesting. And the Ruan Xian is the nephew of the Ruan Ji, okay? So that's the 7 people. So some people like famous story is Ruan Ji, and he let me see, Ruan Ji, he is for example he's so-called practice Xiao, the filial piety, and then when his mom died, he's very sad. But according to Confucius' teaching, you should not drink or entertain for 3 years, but he immediately get drunk and keep drinking. The reason is he's very sad, very distressed for loss his mother, so he kept drinking. Another story is that I think in the book is writing, he is in the wine, the drinking store, and the wife is beautiful and he really like him, so he sometimes sleep with her, but has no sex on that. He just enjoy the aesthetic on that. Okay, so that's the style he's doing. And he and his nephew, what's his name? Ruan Xian, okay. They drink, the Ruan family like to drink. And then they have the pig come. They don't use cup, they use big vessel to drink, like this picture. And then the pig come and pig drink. So they just start to drink with pig. So that would be, if you think about Zhuangzi, it would be the second chapter, right? Talk about the equality of things, right? So the pig is just drinking with me, that's same. And then so should be careful when he drink with you, he may see you, as valuable as pig. So that's his behavior. Okay. Another person called Liu Ling. Okay, his famous thing is he like be naked. Okay, and then just enjoy the bare body. And then when people come and say, "Oh, why you are naked?" He say, "Oh no, I use the heaven and earth is my clothes, and the house is my pants. Why you come to my pants?" Right? So you can think about the idea. He's thinking about the happy excursion. In the Zhuangzi, he's talking about like the big birds, right? The rock, right? Fly 9,000 miles, so huge. So I'm the huge guy. The heaven and earth is my clothes. Okay, so that's what he's talking about. And actually, he was a very skinny, thin guy. So one day, somebody want to hit him. He said, "Oh no, I'm so skinny. You must feel very uncomfortable to hit me." So people just walk away. So this kind of people. So there are other people, okay, like Wang Bi. Okay, if you read Dao De Jing, he's also famous on the commentary on the Analects and Yi Jing and Dao De Jing. And remember, if you look at the time, he only lived to 23 years old. Okay, so he only had a very short life, died very young. But he especially his commentary on Dao De Jing is very famous. Okay, Tao Yuanmin, I think the 2 months ago, Pin has introduced, right? Talk about the Taoism Utopia. He's also like another famous guy. And I'd like to a little bit talk about Xie An. Okay. That probably can represent what the style of they are doing. Okay. Xie An was a prime minister in the, I think it's the Jin, Eastern Jin Dynasty. So remember that time North and the South are separate, and the North government one day want to invade South, and they have 1 million soldiers try to cross the river, Yellow River, to invade the southern part. Okay, so people are scared, because the people are doing this kind of qingtan, pure conversation, and not really doing the military thing. So people are scared. And the Xie An is as a prime minister. He still dressed as usual and tell people don't worry. And he sent 2 of his nephew to lead the military to defend. Okay, so he just like said, "Don't worry, I'm taking care of that." And he just after office he had a drink with his friend and play the chess, not really go game, right? Play the chess with friend. And during the game, and they have the messenger coming, okay, emergency messenger. Okay, the message is sent to him. He just open the letter, take a look, and set aside, and continue to play the game. Okay, so the person asks, "What's the message?" He said, "Oh, nothing important. The young people have never seen a big thing, so they think that's important. Actually, not that important." So they just play the game and leave. So the message said, they defeat the enemy. Okay, so for what reason they defeat? There's many theories. Is it totally by luck, or he has a prepared? We don't know. But that's the style they appreciate. during that time. Okay, you have to become after never worry, comfort. This kind of style they are talking about. So that's the people talk about. I hope these people bring up what kind of lifestyle you are talking about during this period of time. And then so before I move to the next section, we're talking about especially focus on qigong, and then if that's open for some discussion or you have question. Kevin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Do you think this is 7 stages in bamboo? This is very similar to the Western style lifestyle. That's close one in Chinese philosophy or lifestyle.
Excuse me, I didn't get your question. You mean the 7?
Yeah, my question, these people's lifestyle or thought very close to Western freedom, like, very.
Yeah, I would say, because that's why I want to introduce the next writing on the qigong, because they are appreciated, and you can see why Chinese history or not appreciate this kind of people, because they appreciate individual, they appreciate
nature.
Freedom. Okay, say so when I read this one, I constantly think about John Stuart Mill's on liberty, especially on the 2nd chapter, talking about the individuals. Okay, so this kind of thinking, and then of course in Confucius society, people don't appreciate this kind of thing. James, please.
Yeah, I was thinking that this period of time in the Greek world was, or the Roman world was, I'm thinking it's around the time of Constantine, and also late antiquity, and the Greek, the scholars Boetius and Plotinus and so forth. They were basically trying to crystallize. They were trying to crystallize Greek philosophy. They were trying to create a kind of a new consensus of Plato and Aristotle were starting to emerge among the philosophers of that time.
Yeah, like Boetius during this time, and the Neoplatonism, so this time, and the later time is St. Augustine, right? So basically that's the time, and then that I think that's the. So I think I showed the map 2 weeks ago. In the Western during this time, you split. The Roman Empire split to the West and the East, and in China split to North and the South. So I think that's the situation. Okay, so let me do some reading. I'd like to introduce this person, qigong. He's one of the 7 sages. Okay, so he's a great musician. Okay, first they all drink a lot. Okay, so we don't have to mention about this. And most of them are musicians. They're good in music. So qigong and another one called San Tao. San Tao working for the government, actually. He has a job, official job, but qigong refused to work for the government. Okay, so that's the story. And because qigong is famous, and then the government kind of like forced qigong to work, and the qigong just didn't want to do it. So turn out qigong got executed. Okay, but before he got executed, and before his execution, he is good in this instrument called qin. Okay, he's an excellent composer, music theorist, and also a player, the qin player. So before he died, before his execution, and he requested to play so-called Guangling San, which is a Guangling melody. It's probably according to traditions, the most beautiful, most difficult to play music. So he played this music and died. And he said last word is say, from now on, nobody can hear this music. He's the only one can know how to play, and it's not easy to learn, and he only skillful to learn. So That's his story. Okay, and then his vision. And then I'm going to introduce 3 writings from him. One is when San Tao asked him to work for government. He wrote a letter to break off with San Tao, okay, because he said, okay, but before his execution, he still asked San Tao to take care of his 2 his sons, and the San Tao even break off with him, still taking care of his son. Okay, so that's their kind of relationship. So, okay, before I talk about the break-off, let's talk about his writing, second one, the essay on, I think she'll call nurturing, 养生, should be called nurturing. I think I like the nurturing life. Okay, so talking about the debate on nurturing life. Okay, he famously write the nurturing life. Okay. And another one of the 7 sages, Xiang Xiu, it's kind of debate with him. Okay, so you can see how do they treat emotion. I just make it simple. Okay, Ji Kang said, "Be pure, empathy, calm, and peaceful." Okay, Xu Tai. Okay, and minimize personal belonging and desire, and don't pursue fame, rank in order to maintain one's spirit. Don't eat heavy flavor food. I think he meant delicacy in order to preserve your body. Okay, that's his writing. And then Xiang Xiu kind of think about different way. He said have to follow the nature of heaven. What he talking about, like you should enjoy your food. You should have your emotion go. Okay, that's the way to be healthy. And the Ji Kang has another one to counter his argument. He said there's the 5 dangers. We have to remove the fame and the profit, entertaining music and the sex, delicacy and the weak spiritual and the dispersed varieties. Okay, so that's their different idea. I don't go to the detail on this one, but I just want to show they have the kind of different kinds of thinking about the nurturing your life. And the interesting is Ji Kang is a great musician, right? And he also talked about avoid and the music. So here is this one, the Chinese word they use, 声色. Okay, I think that he meant the entertaining music associated with sex. Okay, because when they have the beautiful girls entertain, they play music. He is against this kind of music, not the music he is playing, which is classical music. That's the only thing I can explain, but I think that's he's talking about. So that's the first thing I like to introduce. And then let me move on to this one, the very famous letter. Okay, if you I don't know how many people in Chinese education who read this one, but it's others, again, it's a long letter, but I just summarized for the last part. Okay, the story is Ji Kang, okay, not Ji Kang, San Tao, he working for the government, and he want Ji Kang also work, because the emperor kind of forced San Tao to bring Ji Kang back to the government position, and Ji Kang just didn't want to do it. Okay, so he write the letter. It's a good letter, and then he talk about you talk about Ji Kang talk to San Tao. He say you must know that a stray wood cannot be used for wheel. A bent wood cannot be used for a beam. Okay, you don't want to waste the material, because you don't want to waste the material, and you also want to fully use all material. For this reason, people have their own profession and they enjoy their own work. Only the enlightened people know that. You must be one of them. Okay, so remember on the philosophy part, the Neo-Taoism, they talk about everyone work according to their ability. So they reject Confucius' teaching about like you have the better person, you have to improve, going higher and higher, become perfect. They are talking about people are different, okay? Instead of higher and lower, they talk about difference, okay? I'm good at doing music. I'm good at take care of myself. I'm good at something else. And you're good at the government business. Then that's a different thing, okay? Not necessarily like in today, we probably see it's common sense. But during that time, if you think about in the Confucian society, you have to argue hard on this part, right? So he continues said it is wrong that someone like a beautiful hat and force people to wear them, or enjoy smelling food and feed that rat to chickens. Okay, I'm now studying the way of nurturing life. I would like to alien glory and splendor, avoid delicacy, calm down my mind and practice Wu Wei. Okay, so he's talking about this. Then he talked about that's the last paragraph he talked about. He talked about a savage found sunbathing on his back enjoyable and the wild vegetable delicious. He wanted to offer them to the emperor, and we may appreciate his intention, but the difference between them is great, between the emperor and the savage. And I hope you don't imitate the same mistake, okay? So he's talking about you and I, just like emperor and the savage. And he used emperor and savage. He's not talking about the ranking difference. He's talking about the difference, right? We are different people, okay? So this is my intention and you should understand, and we should break off now. So that's his famous letter to break off with his dear friend, San Tao, and that's the letter he is writing. So before I move on, and then if any question or something, otherwise I will move to probably the last part of this one. Kevin, please.
Yeah, can you back to the last slide? Oh yeah, this one. It's very beautiful. From the last one, the last sentence, the comparison about savage versus empire.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. For example, here use taste. I remember when I was childhood, some officers from the city visit village, they enjoy. They ask specifically what's the food locally, and because they cannot eat from the city. That's one. The second one, some Western people visit some poorest country or village. They surprised, they learn from they never think about it, never saw about that kind of experience. That's the media. Another one, the first one, very interesting. Yeah, that's not about. You consider that's my brainstorm understanding yin and yang. Confucius is one way. I would say they still like we got a traditional schools, 20 student or 30 student, one classroom. We try formula one thing, learn techniques. Here thing about by the way, even Confucius, 因材施教, still based on personal interest, the personal ability, try teach the different ways. Here another way, think about like kind of opposite. Okay, if this is straight, try to do something better with you don't make wheels, maybe make with a beam. So it's what a summary is in old philosophy, what we experience today in older days already have some wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Madeline, please.
Yes, this is about that last paragraph as well. Perhaps I'm reading too much into it, but since we're here in the Bamboo Grove, it's a philosophy group, why not? I'm looking at, we may appreciate his intention. I hope you don't imitate the same mistake. So the mistake is that the savage offered something to the emperor. In other words, someone powerless and unrefined offered something to the emperor. I hope you don't imitate the same mistake. It's kind of an insult to the addressee. But then the next sentence says, "This is my intention," and is that, you know what? Hey, I'm just a savage, sunbathing and eating my vegetables. You go do your empire thing.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. And then from the text I'm reading it, the original Chinese, I don't see, well, of course, everybody will pre-assume the savage is in the lower rank compared to the emperor. But from the Chinese text, I don't see the ranking difference. I only see the profession difference. Okay, in my point of view. Okay, so I try. That's why I make this translation. Yeah. And again, I think this translation is a little bit difficult, for me to translate. Okay. So I'm going to move on for the next one, and which I think is important, is not covered in the Feng Youlan's writing, and but I think that's important because this writing is. Just like Kevin said, that's very westernized, and so Chinese word "si" and "gong", that's a common word, and then in general we translate as a private and the public. Okay, so I just want to make sure people understand these two words, and they have very loose meaning. So you probably can mean as individuality. Of course, today's Chinese we have a better words, but we talk about during that time. The "si", okay, private, self, individual, personal, or for myself. That's all means "si". But they probably imply some selfish, bias, or even smallness. Okay, something small, something like this. And the "gong", in general, I will translate as for public. And also means common, means share. And sometimes the hidden meaning means fair, means just, means large, means good for all. Okay, so that's these two words different. And Ji Kang write a very good article on that. Of course, it's long and it's so I only take a few sentences to translate. I think he tried to separate the gong and the si from good and the bad. Okay, because people kind of mix together. Okay, so he said, good or not good are the extreme condition of things. Most things are between good and not good. People call the successful method for the public, which is gong, and the failed method for self, okay, which is individuality or si. Actually, the same method can be either successful or failed. So he's talking about people judge what's gone public for public and for self, just based on the consequence of the result, right? If we are successful, that's hey, that's gone, that's for public. And at the end, he bring up a very good example. He talked about, for example, my brother's son was sick once. I visit him 10 times a day, but I sleep well in that night. When my son was sick, I didn't visit him even once, but I cannot sleep all night. Am I selfish? Okay, he said, am I si? Okay, and or selfish or individuals? And his answer is, I was wrong. Okay, he means he did something wrong, but it's not about individuality or selfishness. Okay, so here he want to explain the difference. He said the business of individuality is usually unspeakable. Okay, and the result of public work are completely described. The reality of the goodness is usually unnamed, but the guilt of wrongness is on the intentionality. So he kind of separate. I hope I have more time to do a thorough translation, but basically, I think he tried to separate when people label public as good and private or individual as bad. He said they are separate concept, and then for what is good, usually we don't have the name. And what is wrong, usually is your intention, which people also don't know. People can see is the individual and the public. So that's the thing he tried to lay out. Of course, this one probably, well, with my limited knowledge, the only one exists in the Chinese history talk about this kind of subject. And of course, I will compare with John Stuart Mill on liberty. Okay, 1850, that's much, much later, 1500 years later. And then at that time, he would be much more mature. And interesting, he comment on Chinese civilization. He said, we have a warning in China, a nation of much talent, wisdom, good set of custom, men of the most intelligent. They are remarkable. He talked about good word about Chinese history in the 19th century. But on the contrary, we have become, they have to become stationary in making people all alike, all governing their thought and conduct the same maxim and the rules. So he's talking about Chinese culture are great, early enlightened, but unfortunately, Chinese has keep everything as conformity. Okay, I think he's talking about Confucian society. They want to keep everybody, and that's why they put Chinese development in stationary. So he called conformity is dangerous. Western, so he started warning. Okay, English during that time, people try to move, be more conformity. Okay, be conform. So Western civilization approach is well-intentioned conformity to praiseworthy maxim characterized by Chinese civilization. Therefore, action in themselves do not matter. Rather, the person behind the action and the action together are variable. So that's it. He's on liberty, talking about individual. So that's why I think this one, Ji Kang's writing on discourse on individuality is important, because part is real, in the Chinese history and Chinese philosophy. Yeah. So I probably will end today's section here on time, and then I have other things I want to talk about. Is just review the last week we talked about the Xiangguo philosophy basics. It's a continue from the development from the Tao as nothingness, and then go to the metaphysical argument, self-transformation, and talking about the change of the world and humankind is the greatest force. And then he talked about the social philosophy, the society should follow the changes, unlike reject Confucius, go back to ancient sage king. Then that's the government, the society should follow the trend of change. And as a person, talking about wu wei, basically talk about empathy, and that's so-called 豁达率性, right? 豁然无情, okay, without bias and open. I think empathy probably not the right word, probably means openness. Then pursue freedom, and they should live life primitivity and simplicity, and no imitation. And the two important concepts in 庄子 they give out. One is about the moral equality of things. Everybody is the same. Happy excursion, okay, and then be independent and always free. And then the last thing is transcendent form and image. So you don't limit yourself to the form you have, okay, but you don't push yourself to mimic other people. That's their philosophy bring to the life. That's my introduction for today on this one. So any question, comment for today and for this issue? Okay, we have Alex, Kevin, and James. Alex, please.
Yeah, I think one idea that's kind of left out is the idea of consciousness versus unconsciousness, or in between. as we know, the seven sages, the way they live, drinking and living a free kind of lifestyle. I think because when you're so self-aware, I think most people have experience with wine and with alcohol, and it kind of take yourself to a different level. You're conscious to a different level. So I don't know how that I don't know that they use that as a way to kind of simplify their mind to be more impartial and easier to express their emotions. Let's say when they're this is a very famous phenomenon, because I probably like to talk about Chinese calligraphy, the art and philosophy of Chinese calligraphy. So in the sense that the best calligraphy is a lot of times produced throughout Chinese history when they are under influence, most likely wine, and that moment of expression, of not self-aware, of not thinking about many other things, and it's that sudden emotion, that moment, the moment in time when you're able to express that emotion. Many times they cannot reproduce the work, the calligraphy or the poetry that they produce. So that is a very, even though it sounds kind of silly, like drinking, but that actually I feel like has, that consciousness and unconscious has a big part in this way of life and philosophy.
I think I agree with you, but I don't see any writing. Okay, in Chinese philosophy, talk about consciousness, right? So that's the part I don't see the writing, but that means they don't practice it. Okay.
No, there's not a real theory behind it, but definitely like Wang Xizhiwang, the best calligraphers, they talk about that a lot. They talk about how they can.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, from what I know, my own readings, they talk about how they cannot reproduce what the calligraphy, when they are at the moment, and they try to express their emotion and how they look at life, or something that happens, or how they feel about friends passing, how they feel about their family. Sometimes it's easier for them to express these emotions with the help of alcohol. And I think the influence or confusion, idea of life is so restricted, so repressive, so repressed, that they need something to really bring the true the true self out, such as Lan Ting Xu. That's the best calligraphy of the world, Chinese calligraphy, that was produced under this influence. And when he woke up, he didn't even know that he wrote the poem. He didn't even know that he produced the calligraphy. And the best kind of calligraphy, associated with this kind of lifestyle is actually, it's often imperfect, very often imperfect. And it's always a moment in time that they will create something very quickly. I just want to mention.
This part, one of my friends, he is a calligrapher. Okay, so he told me exactly the same thing. He writes something, and then he sometimes he look at it. He said, "I wrote it in the moment, and then I cannot do the same thing again, because that's just in that moment he do it." So that's the part I can verify, with my friend. He told me that. Kevin, please.
Yeah, thank you. I will, thank you your effort I've learned, and also for your Feng, I'm going to interpret your last slide. basically Western, and you compare ontology, compared to the number 6 epistemology. It's very interesting. Dao De Jing Dao from Kongzi focus on Dao. You see, that's very interesting. If you want to learn more about ontology in Chinese from Dao De Jing, if you more from the epistemology, that's Confucius on today other Neo-Taoism, and very interesting. Number 5, very. I would introduce another term, Jason, you can consider why we need Wu Wei. You use empty without bias. One word in Western Wikipedia called confirmation bias. How many we have? We can, unbelievable. That's why we got so many confirmation bias. That's why we need to move Wu Wei. That's my today I just think about now. And also, another thing, the number 7, about morality, equality of things. What's morality? Normally focus human first, or me first, or we first. How about other things? Not just, if we consider we are a mammal, how about other animal? How about a plant? That's very interesting. That's one difference in traditional Chinese. The loss from nature is metaphorical, all use the nature way. And also like number 10, transcend the forms and images. Don't stuck with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Madeline, please.
Yes, thank you, Jason. This is really great. My question is actually, it's a holdover from last week. It was the finger and the horse reference. I've been looking for it online and I just couldn't find anything. So I thought I would ask you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, James, please wait for 5 minutes. Actually, I specifically make one for Madeline. Okay, so then I kind of forget. Okay, so sorry, Madeline. Okay. And another reason I want to talk this finger and the horse is it's a perfect topic for qingtan, pure conversation. So that means finger and horse. Okay, so it's a little bit. Okay. This one only represent my understanding because I did some search on the internet. There's many modern philosophers, Chinese philosophers, talking about this subject, and they all talk about it in a slightly different way. Okay, that's the thing, the way I understand finger and the horse. Okay, first, finger, 指, okay, it's the same word as pointing, okay, essence, okay, 指, okay, or means particular. Okay, so it's when Zhuangzi or the Neo-Taoism, they talk about finger, they talking about the school of name, Gongsun Longzi. There's one thing called 指物论. Okay, they talking about this word 物莫非止而止非止. That means nothing has no essence. That means everything has essence, but essence is not what was pointed. Okay, so when you point, just the accident. Okay, not the essence or the particular. Or because the 指 finger is the same pronunciation as pointed or the particular. So you can translate as, understand this sentence as nothing cannot be pointed, okay, or everything is a particular, right? But that particular is not the thing in itself, not the essence of thing itself. Okay, so that's Gongsun Longzi's argument, the school of name. When people or Zhuangzi or the Neo-Taoism talking about horse, they talking about the name, the universal. Okay, so the particular, its finger is particular. Horse is the name, is the universal, because at that time the Chinese believe in Western world we'll call them nominalist, right? Because they don't, the universal is in the name. So they are referring to school of name, the white horse. So they talk about the white horse is not a horse. Basic, the argument is the whiteness plus horse is not horse, right? Because it's white. So that's the argument. But you can understand the name. They are talking about white. Whiteness is a name. Horse is a name. Okay. So that's the basic, the background of the finger and the horse. So if you pull out the whole sentence from the Zhuangzi, I think it's on the second chapter, the equality of things. If you read in Chinese, it's very interesting. 以子喻子之非子，不若以非子喻子之非子；以马喻马之非马，不若以非马喻马之非马。天地一子也，万物一马也。That's the Chinese reading. It's very okay, difficult to read even in Chinese. Okay, so in English, I will translate this way. Using a finger to explain what was pointed is not a finger. Will not be as good as using a non-finger to explain what was pointed. That means the thing, right? I use finger to point a thing. So this is not finger. It's just confusing. So you should use non-finger to point something is not finger. Okay. So when you talk about finger, we should think about particular. Okay. They are talking about particular things. Then the second part, Zhuangzi talk about using a horse to explain that horse is not a horse. He's talking about using the white horse to say this is not horse, right? It will not be as good as using a non-horse to explain that white horse is not a horse. Okay, so here he talk about universal. So he quickly draw the conclusion. Okay, the entire world, which is heaven and earth, is just one finger. So he talk about the entire world. It's one particular. There's nothing. You take a total. It's particular, one particular. All things, even we have 10,000 things in this world, right? You can just as one horse. In other words, the entire world is one name, is one universal. So he talk about is one particular and one universal, okay, in his equality of things. So that's probably the best I can explain. I hope, Madeline, does that satisfy you or not?
I am very happy with it. It makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much for preparing this.
Yeah, because I think and that's the perfect subject. Okay, if we want to enjoy it or play the sport of qingtan, pure conversation, that would be the perfect subject to talk about. We can talk about for 8 hours and debate and without touching the real world, right? So, okay, we have James and Kevin.
Okay, I have a question about that though. Do you think it has anything to do with Ferdinand de Saussure or Claude Lévi-Strauss, the semiotics theorists? I see DLJ shaking his head.
Yes. Okay. I sorry. I probably don't understand the name.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yeah, there were a couple of Ferdinand de Saussure was a Swiss linguist, and he came up with the idea of the indicated and the indicator and the indicated, I guess, something like that.
Okay.
The signifier and the signified. That's it. Yeah, okay. And then there was a whole philosophical theory called structuralism that was developed out of that by Claude Lévi-Strauss.
I'm not familiar with this philosophy. Yeah. So DLJ, you say James is right?
Do you know something about this, DLJ? Go ahead.
No, I know nothing. But I'm triggered in the same way. I'm going, yes, semiotics. There you go, Madeline's just the word.
Okay, that's the way. So, but unfortunately, I don't know these philosophers. On the linguistic, on the modern, especially on this person, I don't know much.
Now, could you put up that Neo-Taoist cheat sheet for me that you had?
Okay, this one.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love some of these ideas. This reminds me of like why I like I've always loved Taoism so much, because this is kind of like very early in my life, I developed a very similar philosophy. Everything has to be, there has to be, everything has to follow the Tao. Everything is, everything, the changes are the most important thing, you know, is that the world, the changes in the world, the changes in humans, it's just beautiful ideas, the right kind of Wu Wei, and and I think this and in morality, equality first, always understanding that the equality is the fundamental principle of morality, not superiority and inferiority. And what's the other thing? And the idea of independence, and that everyone is independent. And it's when you're independent and when you're actually transcending the standard forms. I was a jazz musician, a jazz pianist, and I understood that it's when you transcend the established forms that everyone loves you and everyone follows you. In other words, that's when music becomes meaningful, because it's individual, an individual experience. And so I just that and when we talk about one particular form of writing being better than another, you know, same idea. It's the fact that the images become more profound through the transcendence of established forms. So it's a really great list. I love it.
Oh, thank you, James.
Yes, it signifies why Taoism is so important to people in the West. If more people were aware of it. Yeah.
I would like to mention this one is this cheat sheet. I do it. It's not Taoism. It's Neo-Taoism, or you want to call Xiangguo philosophy.
Yeah.
Because I think that probably the first time it's just reverse from what Western developed, right? If you see a Western history of philosophy, they start from Plato already have this idea, metaphysical idea, and move down, and the later part start to talk about social morality, more on social behavior. But Chinese probably developed the reverse. They start from this part, the social, they already assume people living for others. Okay, that's a pre-assumption. And then during this time, because of the political reason, whatever reason, they start to focus on individual. So, and they start to build the metaphysical background. So kind of the reverse development. But that only thing I want to say is this one is not typical Taoism philosophy. And then next week, I'm going to, instead of reading Feng Youlan's, I think it's Mandarin introduced this one, the Professor Dao Jian. I think that article is pretty interesting, and it's I think it's 3-4 pages. You can read it, and of course I will provide some background, and we can talk about the Zhuangzi's Taoism. Okay, so kind of going back to get a review on that. Okay, Kevin and Mandarin. Kevin, please.
Yes, thank you, Jason. I've kind of used a comment about a particular universe with the finger. When you finger, it's not a finger point, right? Directly translate. And also, you think about a Bible from the John translation first, right? The word. When you point, you try to explain it. The word is the God. So you point finger, try to explain, oh, that's your God. Another group of people, religion point, that's another way. If God is not a God, maybe the God, your God is not my God, could be. That's just the second one, the white horse is not horse. That's a kind of uses in normalization. It's another kind ontology, the way think about this one. So if you try to describe it, it's not exactly what it described. It's here, so I would say also if we use Western way, because finger and heart, by a comparison about epistemology and ontology even more. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Madeline, please.
Yes, well, I just thought I would blunder along into into James's question about Saussure and I forget who else, Levi-Strauss.
Yeah.
So I believe what you were referring to is semiotics, which is looking at the language of signs. So what appears as a sign to one person. So it's an extension of the thoughts about subject and object, what the object signifies to someone, what the referent is, what the person's mind is. It's so semiotics, it's basically a subset of biosemiotics or zoosemiotics, if we're going with the equality of things here. I think that it is actually, it may be partly covered in the etymology of Chinese. There are things embedded in the words that go way back that are kind of included. Things about pointing or about hands, about a knife, that are kind of part of the written language. You know, I do remember some discussions about it, but unfortunately by now I can't remember in which of Jason's group it was.
Well, I don't remember either. Okay, so I think we should stop now, and then thank you for joining. And then next week we will talk about the Zhuangzi, okay, the Taoism, okay, the original thinking about Taoism. I kind of like conclude this period of time. Then we will move to the Buddhism. Okay, yeah. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam, for safeguard our meetup. Thank you.